we are going to go ahead and get started. Can everyone hear me? I'm going to say that. Yes. All right. My name is Miranda Lewis, and I'm the Director of Development at Mercy Hospital, Joplin. And at the time of the tornado, actually, I was the Public Information Officer for, at the time, St. John's Regional Medical Center, now Mercy. So it is really my pleasure to be able to be the facilitator of today's conversation, because we've got some amazing ladies here who are going to tell their story from their unique lens and their perspective of the disaster. So I am going to ask them, now, each one of these ladies, I'm sure that you understand that public information officers, people who are in the news, probably are not going to have too much to say. So I am going to ask each one of them to just briefly tell you their name. You do have their bios in your program, but I am going to ask them to go down the line and tell you their names and their role. So,
good afternoon. Thank you for having us. My name is Christy Smith. I'm the Communications Director for the Joplin Area Chamber of Commerce. Anything I talk about today will be more business centered.
My name is Rebecca Williams, and I'm a citizen activist and one of the co-creators of Joplin Tornado Info.
Hi, thanks for coming today. I'm Lynn Onstad with the City of Joplin, Public Information Officer. And looking back at the past 5 years, I've kind of learned that I know the stats of the storm, the statistics, but I don't know all the stories of the storm. So I learn something new every day still about the disaster.
My name is Christy Spencer. I'm the news director for the CBS affiliate KOAM and the Flux affiliate KFJX.
Hi, I'm Carol Stark. I'm the editor of the Joplin Globe. I've been there for 33 years.
all right, thank you, ladies. So as you can tell, we have a wealth of knowledge here, and again, each from a different perspective. So I want to go ahead and get started because we only do have an hour. Lynn, I want to start with you. And one of the things, because we did have some conversation prior to this event, and one of the things that you said was, a disaster is not a place to exchange business cards. Explain what you meant by that.
Well, I think most of you were probably in the initial panel discussion, and you heard that relationships are very important in a disaster. You have to know who you're reaching out to, be able to give them a call quickly. So, network as much as you can in your local community, but reach out further. Go out to your, into the region and even the state levels, because we were pulling resources from all levels. It was very nice to be able to call Springfield and say, hey, I need some PIOs, and they were there, Springfield, Missouri, which is about an hour away from here. Because, we were thinking of the local ones. Well, of course, they were all busy, so.
Can you guys hold the microphone so we can hear you?
Oh, thanks for letting us know.
Mark, I don't know, check and see the. Yeah, that's probably better.
Still not. Can you hear me now? No.
Do we have anybody from AB? Who can help with AB?
Wait, here it is.
Oh, there we go.
It is
Okay.
on.
Okay, we're in communications here.
It's usually on.
Sorry.
Right.
Just blame IT.
There you go. All right. So, Christy, one of the things that you've mentioned, and kind of to Lynn's point too, have a relationship with your contacts. Tell me how that relates to your business and how that helps you as in the news media.
Well, I think that we need to know who we're going to be speaking with, who we should reach out to, especially in a disaster. We're trying to work as quickly as possible, so if we know exactly who we should be talking to, who the point of contact is, then that's going to save us a lot of time when we're trying to run and do as many stories as possible.
Okay, Carol. This is a very interesting conversation, especially to me as a former PIO. One of the things as a PIO that we try to do is to build a rapport and a relationship with our local media. Explain to me what your role is as a news organization with relationship to, is it a partnership, or what is the dynamic between media and PIO?
Well, it's never, in the news we don't use the word partnership. And it doesn't mean anything. I've known most of these ladies forever and ever, and it doesn't mean that, but it means that we have a different role, and sometimes our role is to get into what they're telling us and making sure that that is true. I don't mean that it is accurate, and you examine all sides of it. And so, we work in, they put the information out, and then we go out and we work independently. We talk to our sources, and we use the information they have given us as a starting point. So the better the starting point, the better the better the information. And I guess that's what I would say is, hey, give us what you can to get started, but that won't be all that we report, and then we will see where this story goes. So for Christy and I in the news business, we're not partners with anyone, but rather, the only partners we have are our readers and our viewers.
That's a great point. Kirsty, so you're in a little bit different situation, because really everyone else, the disaster is so personal, because lives were lost, and you have to know what healthcare services are available, and that's something that everybody at the table was really focusing on. You had a different perspective being in the business world, because as you've said before, that's not so glamorous, unfortunately. So in a challenging position like that, you mentioned that you should set the tone early for communication. Explain that based on your role.
To Miranda's point, the chamber, our goal immediately after the tornado was to share the status of our businesses and get aid and help coming in for our business community. And that was a hard message, that was a hard sell in the immediate aftermath of the tornado, because we did have lives that were lost. We had families that were devastated. But we knew we had a very brief window of time where we had the national audience's attention. And we needed those dollars to help our businesses. We knew that this town would rebuild, but if we didn't have jobs, if we didn't have businesses, there wouldn't be a reason to have the community. So from the business perspective, we really needed to push businesses here. Business is still open. The businesses that are destroyed need your help. That was a tough sell, while still being aware and sympathetic to the fact that the rest of the community was dealing with this tremendous loss, while we were trying to get media attention to help the cause that we saw coming into the future. So our tone that we struck very quickly was a little bit less of the thoughts and prayers tone, and a little bit more of the we're business here. Of course we were devastated. Of course we all had family and friends that were touched very closely by this. My office is very small. We have a woman in our office who lost her home and everything in it. We know people that perished in the storm, so we of course put our thoughts and prayers out there, but we didn't do them every day. We did not give as much of a heartfelt kind of social media push every day as some of the other organizations were doing. Those were wonderful and needed, and we all needed those thoughts and prayers. But from a business perspective, Joplin is here. We're not wiped off the map. Our businesses are open. Come to Joplin, do business with us, send resources for our businesses. We need your help in Joplin. And we took a pretty business tone.
Sure. And so Rebecca, you started a very famous Facebook page where people went for information. One piece of advice that you've given was not to be afraid to make mistakes. So my question to you is, how did you verify your information, and how did you recover from mistakes that you had or that you may have encountered?
Well, sorry. First of all, during the course of a disaster, no matter what your role is, because of physical, mental fatigue, or just, by golly, bad decision making, you're going to make some mistakes. As long as you own that, fix it, and move on, you're okay. I think owning it is very important, and especially, you asked about social media. If we did make a mistake, we, if it was appropriate, we deleted the information that was bad. If not, we immediately corrected it, you know, took ownership. And the thing about social media is that we learned that social media is very much self-correcting. If a page or someone posts on a page something that is not correct, if you have a very large audience at all, very quickly they will let you know exactly what's going on.
It's a very good point. I'm not sure I know what you're talking about, but I've heard that. I've heard that. So, Christy, there was an onslaught of national media. You being a local news media organization, how did you manage? Obviously, from the PIO's perspective, we know how that worked. But how did you manage, or how did the national media impact your ability to tell the news?
I think other than maybe sometimes creating a line of, you know, to get into, to be able to interview people, we did not have much interaction with our affiliates that came from Tulsa or Springfield or Dallas or Wichita or from New York. They did their jobs and we did ours. They all offered to help and asked what we needed, but then no one showed up with it.
That's interesting.
So we were pretty much on our own, and it was just such a busy time. You know, any extra communication you would have with networks and things like that was very brief, and it was great that they sent their own people here, because otherwise they would have been asking us to do those live shots and those kinds of things for them, which we were already taxed. So I guess it's great that they sent their own people.
And that is interesting to know. And just totally as a side note, one of the things that we experienced whenever you show up and everything is gone, you realize you don't have notepads and pens, and that's one thing. Actually,
We had
your
reporters who
station
didn't have clothing,
right.
so
Your station sent over a car and sent notepads to me. So and pens. So thanks for
I
that.
wasn't aware of that.
Yeah. So good job, Carol. One of the things that you talked about, and it's bringing gravity back to what you do. One of the big stories was the issue of the death and management of bodies and all of that. Can you talk about what that impact was for you as a news organization?
Well, first of all, we had to cover this, and you talk about the national media. They were either users or helpers during that time, by the way. I could tell real quick if they cared about sharing information or if they just wanted to pick us clean and then go use it. And 3 days into it, I just finally said, get out, just get out. So yeah, we tossed a TV station out of the newsroom, by the way. I don't think it was one of your people.
They were bringing supplies to us. So
but no, we had 9 reporters who lost their homes and everything they had. We had one of our page designers who was killed. So, and everybody that could came in that night. I had people that had only what they had on their back, and they were writing stories. We took this very seriously, and we wanted to own this story. And it was our town, and it was us. So the first thing was the dead list. That's what, so on Wednesday, a father who's adult, developmentally disabled, I think he had Down syndrome, his 48-year-old Tripp Miller, He died. He died in his father's arms. His father knew he was dead. He calls me on Wednesday after the tornado, and he goes, Carol, please help me. And he was sobbing. He goes, I just want to get my son's obituary in the paper. I can't get his body, but I just want to tell people that Tripp is dead. So we had both coroners in Jasper and Newton County had made the decisions that they were not going to release, they were going to allow families to release the names or mortuaries. So you can imagine from my perspective that, oh my God, that's going to be very difficult. The governor did step in, and the highway patrol then became in charge of their dead list, but we had already started ours. And I brought the first paper. The first names of the dead appeared on May 27th. And we started our own based on our obituaries. Now, we normally do paid obituaries, but for this, we did not charge any of those people. So we began our own dead list. 3 days later, then the state started releasing names too. We ran both of them because we were so much further ahead than the highway patrol at that point. And so we ran both of them until finally all of the names were the same. But we did that, Miranda, for 4 weeks, and we did not feel like that we could move on until we had everybody who had died and we had released their name. And then it was only after that that we moved into some, there actually, folks, were lighthearted stories out of this as well, but we couldn't go there until everybody that was dead had been listed in our paper. And for that, I think my staff are heroes. I had a 24-year-old girl, and she was in charge of the dead list, and Emily Yonker can recite the dead list from memory 5 years later because she took care of that every day, made sure those names were correct, she verified them, she gathered all their photos. She can say their names, all 161, in alphabetical order from memory.
That's amazing, and it speaks to, this isn't a job. This happened to this community, the place where people live, and not just work. This isn't just your job. So thank you for that, Carol. Lynn, you guys had press conferences every day. Every day. So I know that wasn't any kind of a challenge for you at all. But how exactly did you determine what are you going to put out? Where do you even start?
Well, the first press conference we held was at 5:30 a.m. the next day. I felt it was very important for us to be out in front before the morning newscast. It was going to be a Monday morning. We knew, obviously, they were already in town. They were asking a lot of questions. We were getting information, that they wanted this, this, and this, and just pulling at us. So we held the first press conference at 5:30 a.m. Basically, it was just, this is the plan. We are in the search and rescue. We will give you information as we can. We're going to set a press conference every day for sure. We set that time at that point, but we held another one at 9 a.m. that day because at 5:30 a.m. there were so many questions. I can't remember what the first talking points were. I think we did release how many had died at 5:30 a.m. I believe the number was like 68. We knew that at that time. And then at 9 o'clock the number was growing. Number your news releases. That was something FEMA External Affairs told me. Start numbering your news releases so you can easily track those or time them because you're going to be putting so many out in one day. You can't just look at May 23rd and know that's the news release of the day. No, you probably put out 7 that day or 8 or whatever. But so at those news conferences, the idea is people can remember only 3 things. And I don't mean necessarily the audience only remembers 3 things. I'm also talking about the spokesperson. We had a great spokesperson. Our city manager, Mark Hoare, took command and said, I'm going to be the spokesperson. I can do this. And people trusted him. He had just we had remodeled or refurbished the downtown recently and worked through that program. And so a lot of people knew him and had been working with him for a while. So he took charge and he was going to do that. But he's also one that he wanted me to write speeches. Well, you know, under stress, I couldn't write a speech. I could barely think myself. So I came up with, how about 3 talking points? He said, okay, I'm good with that. So people remember 3 things. So we started with that, the first press conference, 3 things. 5:30 a.m. was pretty grim. Some of the shots that you saw in the panel discussion, you know, there was an officer. I took that shot, you know, at dusk, or rather dawn, rather. That was the first shot of the Cunningham Park. From that, the news media obviously had dozens of questions. We had staff members taking down those questions, and then we went back and prioritized what are those things, you know, what do we need to be addressing. And it got easier as time went on, obviously, you know, that it started thinning out. But that's what we would do, is we would listen to the reporters, listen to the crowd, and when we go out to the press conferences, what are they talking about? What's the information they're not getting? And then we would try to address that.
Rebecca, one of the questions that I had, because at the time I didn't know about the Facebook page, and you know, I mean, you're bombarded with information. What was it? At what point did you say, you know what, there needs to be more information? What information did you feel like was lacking that made you think we need this social media page to make sure that people are informed?
I'll answer that, and then I don't think I answered your first question about how we vetted things.
Sure.
But what prompted the formation of the page to begin with is that a lot of people don't know that Mike Bettis from the Weather Channel was here, and so people on satellite nationwide and worldwide knew exactly what was going on in Joplin. But I live in a community 15 miles south, Neosho. Our Wi-Fi came out of Joplin. Our Wi-Fi was gone. The local television stations, I believe, were off the air initially, is what I... No.
Okay.
But, and you know, it's funny because so much of it is spotty, your memory and such. I also believe, and correct me if I'm wrong here, many of the reporters and such were putting down their cameras and their notepads and rescuing people, you know, from rubble. The news was not coming, locally it was not coming in immediately as quickly as we wanted. I'm a former registered nurse, and we kept getting reports of needs for triage and such, and I thought, well, maybe they need me to go do intakes or help with triage or whatever, and we wanted to know if I needed to go or if I needed to stay home. Because, you know, the worst thing is a bunch of folks that aren't needed, volunteers and such, showing up. So we just couldn't really get the information we wanted, and the reports that we were getting on social media were just incredible. Many of them did turn out to be true, the fact that the hospital was hit, but sitting there 15 miles south, we didn't really believe it, and we wanted to know for certain. My daughter had a background in social media, search engine optimization, and she gets very angry at me when I tell this story. But it was, I could see the 3-year-old Genevieve, she goes, I know, Mom, I'll start a Facebook page. And that's how it started, and we had no idea what we had done because it just so quickly went viral and immediately started meeting needs. We have messages, I saw screenshots where a couple people would say, I'm in Chicago, I am following your page and text messaging the information to my cousin who lost his home and is looking for triage. So it was interesting how early it was really used. And within 24 hours we had 50,000 followers, and it was just nonstop.
And so, as far as vetting your information?
Well, initially, the way we vetted the fact that St. John's had been hit was a personal friend of mine, Kristen Stremmel, works there, and she posted something, and I private messaged her, Kristen, is this true? And she said, yes, we got an email. I don't know how you got a hold of folks early, but she verified. So the first verification was from a trusted friend, and actually a trusted friend can be a vetted source. After that, we would post from KOAM, we would post via Joplin Glow. I have the first 96 hours of our posts. It doesn't include the interaction from the community, but if anyone wants that, come see me and I can send that to you via email. And I will say that my entire experience with Facebook up to that time was just having a personal page, and I was so remedial that the first time I got on there and it said status, I wrote single. So, and I wasn't too far past that when the tornado hit. And so if you look at our early posts, we were just two people trying to get some information. But as time went on, we got much better, and we did that and verified every source that came to us. It was either from a trusted friend, a trusted source, or from an actual news source. We also picked up the phone and did a lot of calling. We're getting this report. Is that true?
And so how did you vet the people who had wanted to date since you were single?
Evidently I didn't.
Okay, gotcha. Okay. Kirsty, one of the things that you have said is that getting to the people that you have relationships with in the immediate aftermath for credible details was a challenge. Can you talk about that and how that impacted you?
Right, absolutely. It sort of goes back to the fact that certainly there were very important matters at hand. Say, for example, at City Hall, we had citizens that needed rescuing. We had folks that needed to bury their dead. Me talking to Lynn wasn't the most important thing that the police officer guarding the door thought. And that was very frustrating. I'm Kirsty from the Chamber of Commerce, and everybody knows me, so let me in. And not everybody knew me, even though everyone should have known me, I felt like. It was very hard to get access to some of these folks that I have years-long relationships with. It was difficult to get past a couple of those barriers. So in the next disaster that we have, knock on wood, I definitely would want, for our sake, from the communicator's standpoint, I want that list of, if this person calls, I want to talk to them. And what I finally did with my staff, and we had lots of volunteers helping us with phone calls, I gave them 4 or 5 names. If Miranda calls, if Lynn calls, if Kelly Price with the schools call, I need to talk to these people. I don't care where I am. I don't care what's happening. I need to talk to them. So those relationships that we had in place that I thought get you right in the door don't always get you in the door, because sometimes there's gatekeepers that don't know you there in the way.
And I, to my defense, I didn't even know she
didn't
was
know.
trying to get to me.
Right.
Because I'm handling all these other phone calls and all these other issues. And so when I found that out, I felt so bad for her, because I know she just wanted information, and she was a great resource to share information. We were going to have our press conferences at the chamber office until we decided to go to Cunningham Park.
Oh, I'm glad you went to Cunningham
Yeah.
Park. To Rebecca's point about Genevieve, there we go, I'm sorry. That page did pop up so fast, and there was information on it. As a business source page, I was a little unsure where your information was coming from. Was it accurate? Had you vetted it? And I was just so thankful that Genevieve reached out to me and said, this is who I am. This is where we're getting our information. We're taking information from you. You need to know that we're doing our best to vet our information. And then I was like, phew, okay, great. And then we could all share information very freely on social media. Social media was so paramount. I think the reason that you didn't have TV is because your cable television provider was probably down. Social media, every single person had one of these, and they were working. They weren't working well, but they were working. So that communication on social media, from my perspective, was huge.
Well, and also an aside, that was 5 years ago. Not everyone had a smartphone, but we had a lot of people who subscribed to our page, and they would get a text message to their page. I know this because about 4, 5, 6 days a week later, I kept getting all these unsubscribed messages. So.
And Carol, one of the things that you mentioned in some of the discussion that we had was, what if the tornado happened today? And how would social media change the face of communication?
Well, it changed us very rapidly, and so one of the things that we've talked about is people can replicate a page. You can replicate a Joplin Police Department page that looks just like the Joplin Police Department's. We will not take a Facebook page and repost it until we do some type of verification. And I know that sometimes slows us down a little bit, but I have seen these where people just will replicate the page. I think you still, especially in something like this, you still need to be really sure of what you're reporting. But a lot of people now totally release all their information on Facebook or through their Twitter accounts, which I think is probably very good, but we need to probably talk about, okay, I'm not going to take or I'm going to check it too, so please don't be angry when my reporter calls and said, hey, I'm just checking to verify this, because people often think, well, yeah, I put it on my Facebook page, but I don't trust it. You know what also helped 5 years ago to people who did not have electricity and who did not have any way to see television? This thing that people says is dead. We were printing 60,000 papers a day. We took them to shelters as well. 60,000 a day, and they were gone every day. So, you know, I still don't think print is, I think it has a really good time sometimes, and that was one of them.
I want to give a shout out to the Globe because they also put them on the trolley, on the buses, anywhere that people were commuting, the Globe was there, and that's where people were getting their information, and that's being innovative with communication, and that really helped us. We just picked up the phone again and said, hey, do you mind, can you put some extra copies here? And they said, sure, no problem. So.
And Lynn, too, I'm glad that you said that, because in some of your communication with me, one of your tips was be innovative with communication. And I think to some degree, all of us became chameleons at that point in time, because you adapt to what is happening around you at that moment. We all know that there's no plan for this. So explain being innovative with your communications.
Well, probably for those of you in the communications field, you're always looking for, especially in government, we don't have money, right, to do communications. So you are looking for that free way to get the information out. So obviously you may be thinking of your traffic signs, you know, your local, you know, in Public Works we have traffic signs, we have MoDOT, we have access to those. The billboards, FEMA had a relationship with billboard companies, and we were able to access those to, you know, they were putting up their message immediately. You know, if you need to register, call FEMA, 1-800, I should remember that number. It's FEMA. 61, yeah. I should know that, yeah. But that's one. But another thing that we did was, instead of, you may have heard of the term JIC, Joint Information Center, where people are actually manning phones, coming together and manning phones. We did kind of a quasi-JIC, where I gathered as many PIOs or people, you know, in the industry as far as communications, our utilities, hospitals, obviously the chamber, the school, the realtors, the realtor organizations, Missouri Southern. We had people at the table coming to meet, and we did this probably within the first week. They sent one representative or two representatives, and we just went around the table and talked about what was going on with our organization. We took notes, we exchanged information, we shared flyers, whatever information, so then they went back and sent it to their audiences, because that realtor organization has a whole different group of audiences that I'll never get to, no matter if they are watching my social media. They're buried in other messages. So they were the trusted source for that audience, and they would carry my message back. So it was kind of like that leapfrog effort. I was really happy with that. Everybody seemed to do well with that. We had a radio station group here locally that went wall to wall for I think 7 or 9 days, and they just basically took call-in shows. It's kind of a little bit scary, you know, because sometimes the answers that they may be giving may not be right, so we had to monitor that. But for the most part, it worked out. Actually, a video for YouTube, how to clean up your debris. We did a video, and it was kind of taxing and hard to do at first, but it paid off, and it was running on YouTube, and people used that. Our city manager actually read a news release online. I don't think anybody ever watched it, but he thought he was doing his part, so I have to get him to do it. So I said, sure, if you want to do that, go for it. So So yeah, basically, but establishing the same time daily press conference was probably the best thing that we could do, is that you tell your news media when we're going to be available, when the next update will be. And then I have to say this in case I don't get a chance to say it. Talk to your local media first, always. Take their calls, take their texts, emails, whatever, answer theirs. Of course, the other news media, you need to talk to the world because you are, being watched by the world. You need to tell them that Joplin is okay, that the businesses will be okay, those types of messages. But most importantly, we need to get the information to those citizens who had been injured, who had been hurt, who had been devastated by this disaster. And our local media was wonderful just to step up and always carry that message for us.
And we really appreciated it because sometimes when the national media sweeps in, it's very, almost tempting to, hey, I'm going to go, because this is a celebrity practically. And as Lynn said, we appreciated it because the city did say, we've got to get this out locally first.
Yep, absolutely, and Lynn, I will echo your sentiments too, because it has been our local media. They were the ones who were there before and the ones who have been there all along. So, we definitely applaud all of your efforts. So we talk about the resilience of Joplin. We talk about how everyone worked together, and we're all friendly up here. We talk about the relationships that we have, and Carol, to your point, media need to stay at arm's length sometimes from PIOs, but we have mutual respect for one another. Not everything is sunshine and roses during a disaster. Hard to believe. But, and I'm going to toss this out to the group. Probably Lynn and Christy and Carol may be able to have a little more to say about this. I know that Carol, and I hope you don't shoot me for this, but there was maybe a skirmish in the newsroom, perhaps? So we had something similar at the hospital that happened. And so if you guys, any of you, if you can speak to maybe something that fatigue or stress or whatever, where you feel like you're at your breaking point. Not everything is sunshine and roses. If one of you can, or all of you, want to relate a story, if you have a story, of yours. Yeah, right. Yeah.
Well, I've got Wally Kennedy, a long time reporter, and he was not in the tornado, but he hightailed it to Freeman Hospital that night. So what he got to see that night were all of these people being brought in on doors, and one man holding his inside. I mean, it was awful, awful, awful. Nothing, we're not prepared for that, but Wally stayed out there and took notes, and then he helped people. Meanwhile, my cop reporter was hit, and Jeff Lair is a grouchy cop reporter anyway.
But a good guy.
But a good guy. He walks in the newsroom, he's soaking wet, he goes, and he had hitched a ride in on it, and this became a national story. He hitched a ride to the Globe, he thanked the people, he goes, I gotta get to the Globe, I have an awful job to do. And he came in, he goes, what can I do? And he was almost in shock, and I go, why don't you just write that story, Jeff? And that was in the next day's paper. But those guys sometimes would clash, and about a week in, they were in the middle of the newsroom, and one of them had their hand pulled back, just like this, and they were going to punch it out. So normally, somebody would have got fired over that during normal times, but these weren't normal times, and so I just get right in there, because they ain't going to hit me. And one of them went home, because I thought, you need to go home. The other one stayed, and then we just moved right on. I had people crying in the newsroom. I mean, I think back to those. A lot of us worked until August 25th without a day off. And I remember that because a group of news people took me out and bought me drinks, multiple drinks.
Orange juice, right?
Plural.
Right.
And that moment for which we all say, we have worked all our life for this moment. So maybe that came out wrong, but that's what you do. It's like we have been working all our life for this moment, so let's not botch it up.
And to go along with that, that's one of the things that I think one of our speakers, or she was asking a question or mentioning the mental health issue that had been brought up by the panel. That's really important for all of you. If you are in a disaster, find a sage, find someone that you trust, and it may not be your best friend in normal times. It may be somebody you hadn't really talked to, but all of a sudden they become the person you turn to, that you can cry to, you can yell at, you can just say, my boss is driving me crazy, what do I do? I can't do this, I can do this, I want to do this, whatever. Find that person that will hold that for you. And it's not talked about, it's just you get it off your chest. And that way you can function and get some sleep.
We brought in counselors 3 weeks later, too.
Two things, oh, sorry.
Go ahead. No, please.
Two things I would add is we learned very quickly that we needed to have a system in place not only to cover the news, but to take care of our own people who were impacted, which we weren't really prepared to do. So we had a set group of people who just went out and bought mattresses, found apartments, went through reporters' homes when they were working. Our sales department did that for us.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
And so they could concentrate on what they were doing. And I think the other thing is that we were very torn because we had this job to do, but we wanted to go out and volunteer, we wanted to help. And we didn't probably recognize at that point that you didn't have to carry a shovel to be volunteering and to be doing your part, but it just seemed like that was the thing to do. And so, you felt very conflicted. I had, family who lost their home. I never went and saw their home for 10 days because I was afraid of getting in a zone that would be closed off and I couldn't get back to the station. So you felt, there was tons of guilt to go around, but so you did feel some guilt about not being able to help those who worked for you or help those in your family because you were reporting the news.
And real quick, if you do have to respond to a disaster, call home. And I don't mean your immediate house, but call mom and dad, wherever they live, or whoever that central point is for your extended family, because those people are going to be calling you otherwise, and it'll bog you down, and you want to talk to them, and you're torn, but you have a work job to do. So if not, bosses out there, make sure they call home when they get there.
Yeah, because it may be maybe days, weeks before you talk to them. And in my case, I couldn't get out. I couldn't make a call out. And a friend of mine who talked to me, she said to me, "Have you told your mother? Have you talked to your mother?" And my mother lives in Alabama. And I went, "Oh, no, I haven't told mom." And she said, "I will handle it." And thank goodness she did, because my mom had been up all night, of course, worrying. But yeah, call home, ask for help, sleep, sleep. Carry extra clothes with you at all times. Boots, and
Get your people tetanus shots. No, you
Yes.
seriously had to.
The nurses, the healthcare coalition here in town, they're one of those groups that knew, they have a great relationship and they work together. They all came together, and our nurses went out in the field and gave tetanus shots. Just went straight, not only handed out bottles of water, you could get a bottle of water on any corner, but tetanus shots. And with the tetanus shots, then we had the idea in the PIO area to hand out the sheets of how to separate your debris with the little diagrams, so they served double duty. But tetanus shots were key. And I can remember that when the doctors asked, "When was your daughter's last tetanus shot?" May 2011.
And that's a great point. Rebecca, go ahead.
Well, just real
No,
quick.
you're fine.
Well, just real quickly, I will say that no matter what your role is in a disaster, that sooner or later physical and emotional fatigue will set in, and it's extremely important to take care of yourself and also recognize when that ugly bug compassion fatigue hits you, because it will. You can only take so much. And I know for myself, I didn't even see Joplin until 10 or 11 days after, because I wanted to be polite and not clutter the situation, and I was tasked with other things, and but I even though I didn't see it physically, I experienced so much of it vicariously through reading, and you've got to take care of yourself. You've got to recognize when that compassion fatigue sets in, because it will. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. You just get to the point where you just can't care anymore.
Yeah, that's very true. I want to make sure, are you guys fine to answer a few questions? We've got about 10 minutes, and I want to be mindful of our time. But if anybody has any questions, we'll be happy to take a couple before we wrap up. Is it not? Sure.
I'm Joplin. I'm with the city of Jamaica. I do the same job that Lynn does for a very smaller city. My question to the rest of the panel is how was it received at the time of this Facebook page that kind of popped up? Because my thoughts would be, the city would want to be the official source of information, that kind of stuff. So how was that?
That's a good question, because in a disaster, like Carol says, you have to vet information. You have to make sure what you're putting out there is accurate. Well, the city had plenty of information that we were getting from the Emergency Operations Center, and talking about debris and all that. I had plenty to post, and I didn't have enough people to post it. So at the time, it was something that I appreciated, because she can post things that, I'm missing a dog.
And answer. We had the time. We answered every single question. You don't have time.
Yeah, because I couldn't do that personal one-on-one touch.
Right.
We were doing stats and how to and what to do. So I appreciated it, but on the other hand, I was like, I don't think we could share it. I couldn't let our people share her information because it had not been vetted, and we didn't have somebody else to vet it. I will tell you, social media has come a long ways in 5 years, and not just with our city operation, but just in general. That I think it is a much more reliable source, and people use that. We use texting a lot. We had our firefighter, our fire chief, who's here as a speaker. He's moved on, but he came back as a speaker. His teenagers were in the EOC. They started texting their friends. We did a text phone tree, so to speak, information. So use your teenagers to text information. That's another way to get information out. But as far as the Facebook, I appreciated it, but I couldn't touch it, so to speak. And make sure you have staff to work social media 24/7 to feed the beast.
For about 3 weeks, it was 24/7, and after about 3 weeks, we were able to not have a night shift. But it was a good 3 weeks where it really was 24/7. We didn't do it ourselves. Pretty early on, we added folks from, at least by phone, other entities, utilities, helping groups and such. But we had quite a bit of help. We had someone manning it all night long and all of that.
Okay, I think I saw this hand first. Go ahead.
I'm Sharon Watson. I worked Greensburg as the state PIO, so a lot of this sounds familiar. But looking back, any of you, one thing that comes to mind as the strongest, what I would have done differently, or I wish I would have done this, and if you have to live it again, this is the main thing I'll take forward to do it this time.
Carol? That's a loaded question.
I know,
I think.
it's hard, because it's probably many things.
I wrote one down. The PIO area, and you probably saw this in Greensburg, it was kind of the catch-all. If it didn't fit into logistics, if it didn't fit into rescue, police, fire, it went to PIO. Donations, phone calls, Lee's nodding her head, she knows. Information people, they know everything. They just take care of everything. Make sure when you do your trainings and things like that, that you have a clear sense of purpose, written and communicated prior to the disaster. That you know what the PIO's role is, and the people in the EOC know that. And if you're going to be expanding to do donations, you need more help to do donations. We're just going to have to put that on hold, because that's the thing. It's just manpower, and you know what your role is.
Anyone else?
I wish I wouldn't have gained 15 pounds eating crap. No. Very sad story. The man who died, he lived in an apartment that was just obliterate in it, and it was not until several days later that we knew he probably was dead, but we got word. I did not know his mother was dead, his father was dead, he had no brothers or sisters. He was divorced. But he had a daughter who did not know, and she was at a college. And I had to be that person to call her. And I was so unprepared for that. And so I've always thought, if I ever have to do that again, and I'm gonna get somebody to help me figure that out. We brought her down, and we had collected some money, and we sent her on a journey to Sedona, where her father had always said, I want my ashes spread. And so we paid for that trip. But God, I felt, you don't know how bad I felt calling this little girl and saying, your dad is dead. So, I don't know, I think looking back, it wasn't the news parts of things that I would do different. It's the human side of things that I wish I had been better prepared for. That was it.
I think for me, and this is not a touching story, but I would have a better grasp of the entire staff that could have helped. I was really concentrating always on news. It's news's jobs, news will do it. We don't need help from other departments and that kind of thing. And that was not the case, and anyone who had any ways to shoot video, we were trying to get it from them. So I wish I had a better just list of cell phone numbers and where people lived, to know exactly who could have been a resource.
Mine is so simple. We lost our internet provider in my office, not in my home, in our office, and I didn't have access to some of these folks' phone numbers because they were all stored in my work files and I couldn't get to them. And that was the dumbest mistake ever as far as I was concerned. Some folks I knew their numbers, some I didn't, and it took me a good day to get all that back to where I could contact my local folks and get in touch with them. So I have about 6,000 contacts in my phone now, and my husband always says, are you going to get rid of those? Are you going to get rid of those? No, I might need them someday. I might need them someday. So just have access to your files, to your information, sometimes in old-fashioned ways, because you can't count on your technology when it's blown halfway across the town.
All right, you good? Okay. One more question, and then I just want you guys to know that these ladies will be available after to answer any other questions, and so.
So a question from them, did you establish a joint information center, or did you use the joint information system to coordinate your activities?
Probably we coordinated in other offices. I mean, we were all in touch with each other, but we did not centrally locate on other than those meetings, like I said, on a regular basis. So it was more through email. We did kind of the email chain or those kind of distribution lists. That's how we operated for the most part.
All right, real quick.
I just want to make one quick comment. So I'm Barb Sterner. I'm an external affairs officer with FEMA Region 7. I had the good fortune of being assigned to Lynn. They said, go help her and do whatever she needs. Anyway, I just want to make one quick comment for people, an observation, if I may, of what I saw about Joplin. One of the things I think that was really effective that made our job easier about communicating information is that somehow along the line, the people in Joplin believe the government. And I can't
At that point in time.
And I can't stress that enough. Like when it got down to stuff being really tough, like I worked with her on the debris stuff. When the city was going to stand up and say, listen, and they did this, if you don't get your debris cleaned up by X amount of time and you don't have a contractor lined up, we are going to come in, we're going to clean your property, and we're going to bill you for it. People listen to that. It wasn't anything FEMA did, it wasn't anything Lynn did. I mean, that was a relationship that existed in Joplin before that disaster. It was very profound. I've worked a lot of disasters. I think it was so important from a PIO standpoint that the city leadership was trusted and was believed. The citizens here knew that if they said, hey, we're going to do this, they meant it. So that made our job like at least 50% easier.
So, I think that all goes back to the partnerships, because we were trying to echo what the city was saying to the business community. We were trying to echo what the school was saying to their students and parents. We were all trying to have that same message. People call the chamber for all kinds of weird things. They called the chamber and said, I've lost my dog, where can I find my dog? Not our bailiwick, but we tried to know that information, and it was having that information from the JIC meetings. It was meeting with the school officials. It was meeting with the hospital officials. That relationship, those partnerships, we can't stress it enough. We would not be where we are today with almost 500 businesses rebuilt and 300 plus new businesses, homes rebuilt, schools rebuilt. We would not be sitting in this room if it weren't for everybody backing each other up.
But the unusual thing in Joplin, I think, and I don't see this a lot of places, is that for some reason, I don't know what it is because I never came here before the tornado, people in Joplin believe the government. I'm not saying they like everything they say about it, but they believe them. And so, honestly, that was huge. If you're in a community where your government, your local leaders, aren't perceived to be believed, yikes. That's a lot harder in a disaster. So I just want to give a hand to Joplin. This is a great team of ladies. I've worked with them for a long time. From my perspective, looking in, the fact that this local government had the attention and I think the respect of the citizens made a huge difference as a communicator. So if you that's something you can do in your own communities over the next few months, years, weeks, whatever. Just think about it. Going forward. That's it.
Thanks, Bob. I'm going to do one quick little shout out. We talked about the consistent message. That became very important at the very beginning. That was the first thing at that 5:30 press conference. I wanted to give a fact sheet to all those national reporters, so we just weren't a cow town in Midwest America. I wanted them to know who we were and what we were, and I was able to do that because Kirsty had good information about the chamber. I was able to pull down bullet points, put it on. Well, since then, it's became a short novel. I have copies there if you're interested. It then became stats of the storm. Like I said, I know the statistics of the storm. There's reporters ask all sorts of questions. Well, if I give them all the information up front, they probably won't call me back unless they need the interview, which is fine with me, because that way I can continue doing my job. The first 3 pages are now the recovery milestones that we've hit. So we're real proud of that. But it's also electronically in your packet that I think you're getting in the conference. But if you're interested, there's printed copies there. But it has some of the information from everybody here.
Thank you, guys. And again, I want to be mindful of your time. These ladies, what? Okay, real quick.
Pardon me?
Tail line.
Oh, the tail line? Yeah, Tornado Assistance Information Line. That was also formed. It was like, you could call in. I didn't mean to make the acronym TAIL, but it did. The tail of the storm. But it was a hotline that people could call in, and I had workers, volunteers work that. We had to give them the A to Z list, so they could answer it because they weren't employees of the city. They didn't know the answers, but they could look it up. So we did have a hotline, one number that they could call with any question. If the volunteers couldn't answer the question, they took the name and number and then got it to one of us and we called them back. Thank you for bringing that up. I forgot about that.
All right, and again, these resources, I believe, are they're online, and I know that on the city's website, joplinbud.org, is that right?
Yes.
There are also some resources that you guys can go and check out some other stats and things. But I want to thank all of you guys for being here and the interest that you have in Joplin and the recovery here. And I want to thank each one of these ladies for sharing your perspectives and what you've done for the communication of this in this disaster.